Hello everyone. Let's continue e4, e5 chapter, knight f3, and now let's study Petroff defense, knight f6. I've played it really a lot. I can even say without false modesty that I've developed this opening quite significantly in the 90s, and many lines were actually quite difficult for black at that time when I started to play this opening, and then now actually it considers to be a very solid and the opening which is quite difficult to deal with for white. Not easy to find an advantage, but well, what can I say about this opening? It is very sound strategically for black. It is very solid. I mean, you don't really risk to get much worse out of the opening if you know the theory. The only maybe minus is that the game is getting pretty direct in Petroff defense. So black needs to know, and to study and to memorize, maybe even more difficult than anything. Lots of different lines, and very often long forcing lines. So that was actually at some point on, I decided to move to some other openings just because it was really a bit difficult for my memory, just to memorize everything. But again, we are talking about the top level. Frankly, I would say that probably it is the opening for top grandmaster level, because actually most of the time here, black has very few chances to, get some complicated game and maybe to get a reasonable, realistic winning chances. So most of the time, what black is aiming for playing Petroff is to try to equalize by force, to have a very solid position, maybe being a very slightly worse and just defending it accurately and making a draw, and moving to the next game where you have white pieces finally. A good strategy for the top level, for World Championship match. I've played myself Petroff in my World Championship match against Peter Leka, and actually made him stop playing e4 after a few games, so he moved to first d4 because he didn't know what to do against Petroff. I also prepared it for my match against Visha Anand in 2008, but Anand was playing d4 also. So for a top level, it's a good opening, and maybe not so pleasant in a way to play with black, because you have to be accurate, you have to be to remember, as I mentioned already, lots of lines, but even more difficult to play with white, because, when you're facing a strong chess player, strong grandmaster, who is very well prepared, playing a very direct opening, you have to have an idea what to do against it. Otherwise, probably you will have very few chances to win a game. So, in this sense, it's also not easy for white. But all in all, again, for a lower level, amateur level, if you're just playing chess, enjoying the game, and playing chess non-professionally, maybe it's not really the opening you should choose with black, because again, a lot of knowledge is required. The game is very positional, not too many fancy variations here. But again, matter of choice, matter of taste. In general, the opening is very, very solid. Perfectly playable, and actually is in the opening repertoire of many top players nowadays, including especially Fabiano Caruana, who actually won candidates in 2018 with this Petroff defense. He managed to win, I think, 2 games with black in Petroff, and then he played it in the World Championship match against Magnus Carlsen, and Magnus couldn't pose any problems really with white. So a serious weapon. Okay, so not a big choice in this position. The pawn on e4 is hanging. So the choice is whether playing d4, whether knight takes e5. Well, of course, other moves like d3 not serious. It's possible to play knight c3, and again, if you're white, if it's in your repertoire, this so-called four knights opening against e5, then knight c3 is a good choice, because probably black's best is to play knight c6 and to move to this opening variation, which we are going to consider later in this course. But well, the only small problem is that I think, well, it's very difficult for white to get anything here in this opening for, well, we call it four knights, yeah, because e4, e5 and four knights are developed. But yeah, there are still some tries, and black needs to know quite a lot of theory. That's why I personally was playing knight c6 against knight c3. But there are some players who just study Petroff. They don't want to study any other lines with a knight on c6. So there is, for them, there is an option to play bishop b4. It's actually a solid move. I think white is slightly better here. Also, white doesn't have a very big choice. He takes on e5, castles. Then he cannot really keep this pawn on e4. So knight d3 immediately, or after bishop e2, rook e8, knight d3 probably leads to the same position. Let's say takes on c3, knight takes e4, bishop e2. I think Artur Yusupov, he had played a lot this, because he was a Petroff player, and he, at that time in the 90s, he liked to play knight c3, bishop b4. So it's almost by force leading to this position. But I believe it's slightly better for white. I mean, after all, white has two bishops. It's a kind of long-term advantage. But okay, rook e8, castles, d6, and then black is playing knight d7, rook e1, knight is going to d7 or c6. Of course, black is very solid. I mean, it's slightly better for white, I believe, but well, I mean, not much for white. Anyways, at least this is considering how solid is Petroff defense. This would be a very good opening result for white to get a position with a certain advantage, even if not big. But yeah, the thing is that knight c3, knight c6 is quite a big problem. But okay, that is another. That is just I wanted to tell you that there is an option of playing knight c3. Otherwise, well, knight takes e5 is, I would say, the main move, even though d4 is also a very serious and dangerous option. So today we will start with d4. So d4, knight takes e4. Yeah, e takes d4 is also possible, but after e5, knight e4, queen takes d4. Yeah, d5 has to be played. It's pretty direct. E d6, knight takes d6. And now white has different ways of playing this position. I mean, it is symmetrical, but white has some initiative due to this very, very badly placed knight on d6. It's actually, yeah, if knight would have been on f6 somewhere, it would probably be just equal. But here, I think the main theory goes knight c3, knight c6, queen f4, and then white often tries to castle on. I mean, this knight on d6 is really not a good piece, and I think according to theory, here black is experiencing some problems. Even though, I mean, it's not much for white. It's never more than slightly better for white. But somehow here you give it for free with black, and white has an easy and comfortable game. So I would not recommend you to play e d4. Therefore, knight takes e4, bishop d3. Well, another option is to play d takes e5. Actually, a very interesting move, especially if you don't want to study all those force lines after bishop d3, and there are lots of those lines there. And also bishop d3, I mean, forced bishop d3 at this particular moment, black is doing fine in every line, which you will see later during this lesson. So d5 is an interesting move. Now, of course, a very principal move is bishop c5. But, yeah, not to everyone's taste, so to say, because now things are going things are very direct. Bishop c4, knight takes f2, bishop takes f7 check. It's all pretty forced. King takes f7, queen d5 check. And now king g6, queen takes c5, knight takes h1, and this position is probably it is a draw. I mean, white has quite a number of attacking options. I think according to theory, black manages to always to hold his position, but it's difficult to analyze every option white has, and in general not so pleasant to play with a king on g6. For instance, can tell you that knight c3, I think h6 has to be played, queen c4, queen d5, and now black's best is king h7. So white can always give perpetual. I mean, one wrong move and black is getting mated immediately. Otherwise, white can always try just to to develop the bishop long castle, so the knight on h1 is not going to survive, but then black would still be exchange up. White has a lot of initiative, very forcing position. I mean, I don't know if it's holding out. I never really analyzed it because, it's not my cup of tea, to play such position, and then maybe you miss some very hidden resource white has, attacking resource, and you just lose a game. So I think that most of the players, but again, objectively, maybe it's enough for a draw, but most of the players are playing d5 here. And now white's best move is knight bd2. And this position is very playable. Actually, it is, again, it's not going to be much for white, if anything, but it's a complicated game, not very forcing position. Probably, this pawn structure is, quite tricky. So sometimes the e5 pawn can be weak and black can take over the initiative, but sometimes white can develop quite a dangerous attack. So here, briefly, what are the moves? There are many moves. Black has knight c6, bishop b5, I think is considered to be not the most accurate. White has some pressure here. Another option is to play bishop e7. Very logical move, but in this endgame takes on d8 and knight d4. It seems that black is experiencing some problems. Still not easy to equalize here. Then knight takes d2 is an option. Not very logical, frankly, to change this knight and to develop white's pieces. But so I also, when I studied it with black, I never liked knight takes d2, even though I'm not sure why it's so easy for white to get an advantage. So one of the ideas is to take queen takes d2, trying to get with the queen to f4, very typical idea. But more common is bishop takes d2, and now something like this, c5, and maybe simply c3, bishop d3, castles, and I don't know if it's anything for white, but black has to be careful, because again there is always a danger to get under attack. So I've noticed that recently some players played queen d7 here. I guess it's a computer move because it's very, I think you'll never come up with it yourself, a human player. So the idea is that at some point, I mean, in a way it's defending against knight takes c4, because now already d takes c4 is fine. And then sometimes black will go with the queen to g4, g6, or activate his queen. A very strange move, needs to be analyzed. Not so much practice, not so many games on queen d7 yet to give a very, clear conclusion. But main move is knight c5. This is the main line. And here white has lots of ways to get a playable position. Bishop e2 is one of the normal moves. I think usually white is trying to chase the knight with knight b3. And maybe knight e6 now is the best move for black. So black is preparing c5, bishop e7, castle c5, knight c6, a very logical setup. And it's a complicated position, playable for white, but probably black is quite okay. For instance, knight bd4 is one of the moves. Then c4 is possible, but after d takes c4, exchange, bishop takes c4, bishop e6, black is, very, very close to full equality, if not already equalized. So all in all, d5, I can recommend you to play it with white, to study it a bit, and there is not much theory, and you will get play, because frankly, in Petroff, quite often it's actually difficult to get a playable position with white. So you have lots of tries, very forcing tries, dangerous for black, but if your opponent is well prepared, quite often it leads to with a forced draw, with a position with very little content, strategical content. So a good player would probably, manage to make a draw without too much difficulty. So d5 at least leads to strategically complicated positions, but I don't think it gives an advantage for white. So the main try therefore is bishop d3, and now d5. Actually, I remember very well, beginning of 90s, there was a stunning novelty here, and I think there was still no computers at that time. So you need quite an imagination to come up with a move knight c6 here. I remember, I think Garry Kasparov has shown me this move somewhere in 94 or 95, and it was quite a discovery for me to see this move. Actually, it is not bad at all. In fact, there's quite a lot of theory developed since then, and it's not easy for white to get an advantage. Well, the idea is that after bishop e4, d5, white cannot keep his piece, because if bishop d3, e4 comes. In case of d5, then black has with a knight f6, with a knight c5, this position, and then again e4, and then he manages again to get back the piece. And I think the theory goes like this: bishop e2, ef, bishop takes f3. So white is taken back with maybe having a little bit better structure, but shouldn't be anything. Then if knight c5 seems to be okay, and then followed by d6. So the best try for white seemingly is castles, d5. And if I remember well, Kasparov was telling me that c4 is quite interesting here. Okay, it's a pre-computer error, so I don't advise you to play it without serious checking with a computer. I doubt it's a good move. That it leads to anything for white. So I think the main line now is d takes c5, but this can be probably slightly better for white, and maybe that is the reason why knight c6 is not very popular nowadays, because here, the knight on c6 is a bit too early. You will see that in a similar line, usually black is trying to play knight c5, bishop e7, castle, and then more often c6, knight d7. Here, knight is already on c6, and I think according to theory, white keeps some pressure here. But anyways, it's just nice to see that there was somebody. I think it was Yakov Murray, a grandmaster who is imaginative enough to come up with this move on his own. But anyways, probably the d5, simple d5 is stronger. And now, now knight takes e5 for d5 obviously is a choice. d5, that's what I meant, that after d5, now usually black is playing knight c5. And I also had one or two games on this. Well, I don't know if there are any line in Petroff where I don't have at least one or two games, usually more, because I played it for many years. So remember, that was quite fashionable at some point, this variation. But for white was trying something. But then, finally, I think black managed to find very, very clear and safe ways to equalize. So it's out of fashion now, because after knight c5, so whether white can try just to leave this bishop on d3 and trying to play for direct initiative like this, knight d4. Trying to push f4, maybe something to f5, bishop or knight, but knight d3, queen d3, castles. Here black is okay, because after f4, very important that black gets f6. And if e6, then black has c5, obviously. And otherwise, it's very important strategical, by the way, resource in Petroff defense. Very often it works for f6 just to stop white from advancing his pawns, and black is doing fine here. And another way for white is to try to keep the bishop e2, bishop e7, castles, bishop e3. And now, that's what I mean, that c6, I think, is more to the point. That's why this Murray variation knight c6 maybe doesn't fully equalize, because here it's quite important to get c6, and actually black just wants to play probably knight b8 d7 and followed by f6, for instance. Yeah, and probably white's main chance to fight for something is to play c4, and there were some games on this position, some d takes c4. I've analyzed it, I remember myself, and I think that it's nothing for white. I mean, white can try a bit, but objectively, if black knows how to play it, I think there is no advantage. So that gets us to knight takes e5, and now knight d7. Well, that's the way I was playing. That's by far the main move nowadays in the position. But I've noticed that recently that bishop d6, which is another line which was always considered to be extremely dubious and if not simply refuted. Refuted in a Petroff sense, which means just not equalizing. Yeah, not equalizing, and that white is slightly better, and having a long-term pressure. So then it doesn't make sense to play Petroff, yeah, if you don't fully equalize. But now I saw there is a new idea here for black, which has to be investigated. You can check it again. It's very tactical, so most of the lines which I'm going to give you, directions, you can always just check with engines, because again the position is very direct. Most of the lines are extremely direct, so you can just switch on engine, spend a bit of time, and find out by yourself the assessment of the position, whether you like to play it or not. But I want just to mention that bishop d6 is not as dubious as it was considered earlier, because after castles, the main move, well, knight c3 is actually very interesting. I always also thought that after bishop d6, why I didn't like this line, because also knight c3, I never liked the rising positions, but again, they're very direct. I mean, usually it comes to this, castles, now knight d7, rook e1. And those positions are quite dangerous for black, because white develops his initiative. He has very easy play, and but I think recently I saw some game of a strong player. He played some strange move, queen h4 here, and actually managed to equalize. I don't know, maybe. But knight c3 is an interesting option for white if you don't find any advantage in the main line, which is castles, c4, and now some amazing move, c5. This is a discovery because, well, in good old days, when computers were not there, so the main line was bishop takes c5, because c6, knight c3, for instance, is quite unpleasant for black. Knight takes c3, b takes c3, and you will have this same position with a knight on f3, white's knight on f3, via the third knight e5 move, and this we will study carefully. But knight on f5 seems to be practically extra tempi, and after knight d7, f4, it seems that white has initiative. There is no way for black to equalize fully. For instance, knight f6, queen c2, takes bishop c4. This knight on e5 is quite unpleasant. Even though, as always, I will repeat again and again that it's so solid for black that it will not be too bad anyway. But here, it's quite clear that it's a dream position for white for Petroff defense. So that's why the main line was always bishop takes e5, d5, knight c6, and now there are many forcing line. I mean, one of it, for instance, it's very direct. This is an old line when, still in the 90s, there were some games, this position, bishop f5, don't ask me why. I guess knight a1, bishop e4. I mean, the problem is that, if that black cannot really manage to get out with his knight, from a1. And then he will have a material disadvantage and a worse endgame. So bishop f5, and now the best move is g4. Again, don't ask me why. I mean, frankly, of course, I understand, because the idea is that if bishop goes to g6, then f4, f5 very often comes. And if bishop takes g4, finally you get bishop e4. Very important move. Knight a1, bishop f4, then knight develops. Black is trying to organize some play while white spending tempest taking the knight. I think that as far as I understand the modern theory, and it's proven by computers, that it seems that it's in white's favor, so black doesn't equalize it. That's why this bishop d6 line was not supposed to be playable, even, I would say, because just simply in every position here black is suffering. But now there is a new move c5. I just discovered it while I was preparing for this course, and well, it has to be analyzed with a powerful engine. I saw some quite top players, strong players playing this move. CD knight f6. Again, of course, a totally computerish way of playing, but yeah, this you just have to analyze this position. For instance, one of the main lines is rook e1, cd4, bishop g5, and I don't know what's going on. Well, but it's not clear if black is equalizing. So if after c4, c5, if this is enough to equalize, which frankly doesn't seem to me that it will be the case, because yeah, white is extra tempi up in a very tactical position. Very often he can manage to squeeze something out of this tempi, but who knows? Yeah, and if it's enough to equalize, then I think this variation you can really try to play with black. I mean, you can consider it. If not, if c5 is not equalizing, then probably c4 is simply leading to white's advantage. And again, just to mention that this 6 knight c3 is a very, very interesting option also for white. So all in all, knight d7 is the main move here. And well, what is the problem of this variation? There is no problem. I think black is equalizing. I remember, because d4 at that time in the 90s was the most popular move, was considered to be the most dangerous. And I've spent, I don't know how many hours, days, if not weeks, to analyze this position, to try to make sure that black is holding, you know, every line here, and white has quite a number of options here. Of course, at that time in the 90s, it was much more difficult because machines were much weaker. So nowadays, of course, there is, yeah, this is a much simpler task. Not even to mention that since that time, there were a lot of practice, a lot of positions were already played, and I think that in general, black is holding everywhere here. But again, as a typical issue for black player in Petroff defense, you need to memorize it all, just to analyze it accurately. Very often, very long lines, up to move 30 even sometimes, just to be sure exactly the right move order, and then you equalize. Otherwise, you are slightly worse and suffering. So, but if you have a good memory and if you spend enough time analyzing it with the engine, I don't think there is any real danger for black in this position. And it's almost kind of sterilized already. There are very few, I mean, lines which are still not totally clear. Assessment of is not totally clear, because you see the position is, as most of the time in Petroff defense, is strategically simple. The pawn structure is symmetrical, so it's all about if white manages very quickly within next few moves create some problems for black, because he's tempi up and this knight on e4 is a little bit shaky, yeah, black's knight. And if not, then there will be zero reason for white to claim any advantage or any winning chances. So the game here is quite forcing all variations. So knight d7 now. Well, queen e2 is an old move, but it's completely harmless. Knight takes e5. White, like this, white actually wins the pawn, but after bishop e6, queen e5, queen d7, black has definitely enough compensation here, not worse at all. So that is totally harmless, queen e2. Then another way of playing is to castle, knight e5, d5. So a little bit different, yeah. I mean, similar to the fifth d takes e5, but just that there is one knight absent, one pair of knights. I think it doesn't change the assessment of the position in general as fine for black. And again, more or less black is doing the same. So let's say knight c3, c6, knight e2, bishop e7. I think that's the way Mamedjarov played against me once in Vaikanze, and it was a quick draw. Couldn't get anything out of the opening. Another way of playing is bishop e2, bishop e7, and then trying to push f4 quickly. For instance, bishop e3, castles f4, but then again, as usual, as we know already, very typical idea, f6, and black is doing fine here. So castles is also not too dangerous move. Then knight c3. This is serious. I would say knight c3 is becoming quite fashionable move now. I played a few games on it with black some years ago. Here the idea is that after knight takes c3, b takes c3, let's say bishop d6, knight takes e5, or knight takes e5 is another option. Bishop d6, yeah, as I've mentioned already, this position can be a bit dangerous for black. Therefore, usually black takes on e5, and now taking on c3 now, or one move earlier than knight e5. So this position is bishop e7, and I think I made a quick draw with Grishuk in the World Championship tournament in Mexico 2008. He couldn't finally get anything here out of the opening and quickly offered the draw. And I thought it was doing well for black. I think I managed to beat Vugar Gashimov in rapid also with black in this position. But lately, so I thought everything was fine here, but lately I noticed that white started to pose quite some problems for black, just playing very simple chess like this, f4, f5, and my understanding of this position was in general that if I manage f5 and bishop on e6, especially due to this weak c pawns, double c pawns for white, I thought black would definitely be fine, but this is not so. I mean, according to nowadays practice, and definitely because of the computer assessment, and that's what computers started to show. When all other options for white were not leading anywhere, then suddenly we all switched on engines and realized that f4, bishop e3, and let's say bishop e6, a4, just trying to put pawn on a5, that this position, strangely enough, is quite dangerous for black. It's not easy at all to equalize, and I think there were two games. Vityugov with Wesley So. Vityugov managed to beat Wesley So in this variation, and also Carlson, who beat Alexei Shirov a few years ago, both games. So after that, it's considered to be, I mean, I'm not sure, frankly, my feeling is that it must be okay in general for black. Shouldn't be a big deal, so to say, but at least there are some problems, and black now stopped most of the time. It's not going anymore for this line. So they're going for bishop b4, and that is actually a white's problem, because again, you need to know with black, you see that you need to know some very forced lines, and this is only one of many. But it seems that nowadays they found in this position, which is very forced, rook b1, and the black has to castle, otherwise maybe he will never manage in this game anymore, because bishop a3 is a threat. Castles, and bishop takes h7 check. Very direct line, queen d3 check, king g8, queen takes c3. And actually black has, because black's king is a bit weak, so there is a certain danger in black's position. White is trying to play queen g3, bishop g5. Sometimes he can get the rook via b4 somewhere to the king side. And it's strategically quite dangerous position for black, but again, at some computers, they show, I think nowadays, a5 move, and I think it's really a very important move, because the idea is that black wants to get his rook into defense via rook a6 and rook g6 or something. So for some reason, it is an important move, and if I remember correctly, I couldn't actually find anything here for white. But again, it is playable, and definitely knight c3 is... another, by the way, idea is just to play knight ef6, castles bishop e7. Also, I don't know if it's that much for white here, but still probably white has some, white can try here. So all in all, knight c3 is a very interesting line for white. I mean, you can really study it. I think that nowadays, because it's extremely forced, I mean, this position here, if black manages to find a very accurate way to equalize, whether it's a5 or maybe something else, then it's very difficult to do something for white, because I think that is practically forced, this position. Otherwise, if you are happy with white, for instance, to play this position, then definitely this variation is very interesting, knight c3. So otherwise, knight takes d7 is a move, bishop takes d7, castles, bishop d6. Well, there was queen h4 was an old line, romantic, line, which unfortunately do not exist anymore most of the time, because the computers showing us the best moves and some lines which are a bit dubious but interesting. If they're not playable, they're not playable. Yeah, and queen h4 seems to be practically refuted now because of c4. And I remember black was trying to play long castle and so on, but you can just switch on engine and see that white is simply better here. So this line is already out of fashion completely, out of tournament practice. So that's why bishop d6. Okay, that is a very important position. Again, playing black. So playing white, of course, it's easier because you can choose. There are several attempts for white to get an advantage. I think none of it works really, but you can choose playing white if you want to check, so to say, your opponent, his memory and his preparation. You can choose one of it. And black, going for this position, black needs to remember everything, every line. And that was a problem, and because most of the time my preparation, I was very serious analyzing Petroff defense. It was my only opening weapon against c4, so I had good analysis, but still from time to time I would just confuse, I would forget some line and just get a worse position. Like I remember one of my games against Visha Anand, somewhere in rapid chess, and he played the line. I analyzed it till draw, but just couldn't memorize it exactly, confused move order and lost basically out of the opening. So that can always happen. But again, if you don't have memory issues, then it shouldn't. You should probably be able to make lots of draws here with black if you're happy about it. Again, if you're a professional top grandmaster, of course, sterilizing a game with black and making a draw out of preparation is usually is a very desirable thing. But maybe if you just want to enjoy playing chess, then I'm not sure that it's to everyone liking. It's just to analyze it till a draw in every line and just memorize it and try to make, so to say, forced draw out of the opening. But anyways, so what are the white's options here? c4 is considered to be the main move, but there are two other quite dangerous options. One is queen h5. I remember this was played against me, if I remember well, by computer engine Fritz in my match in 2006 in Bonn. And it's still causing some problems. You need to be very careful after queen h5 with black, but I think that now there are two ways of playing. I mean, knight f6, rook e1 check is a bit unpleasant. I mean, let's say bishop e7 and now queen can go, I don't know, to f3 and then bishop f4. White has some initiative, bishop g5. White has some initiative. It's not so easy to equalize fully here with black. But I've played queen f6 in this game. Very direct move. Requires very, very good preparation here. And I think the main line here is knight c3, the most dangerous move. Queen takes d4, very direct play. Of course, white has many options here, but again, in all lines, black holds without too many problems. So the main move is bishop e3, queen e5, takes, knight takes d5. And this position is not so easy. After knight f6, very important that white has rook e1 move. And after knight takes d5, let's say bishop d4. And here, I remember I analyzed a lot this position. I think black is in time to make a draw, but has to be still very accurate, because the point that after f6, bishop e5, now, of course, if you just take on e5, then white simply takes and playing rook e1 and takes back the knight, just with the extra pawn. So after bishop takes e5, I think long castle is the best move. Bishop g3, and now there are different options. Knight b4 is very direct, then white is trying to play rook e7 and so on. Well, I think it should be enough for a draw for black, but white still has some initiative. But then, what is important was a very important discovery that black can simply castle, and it seems, if I remember correctly, that was my plan. That's what I wanted to do against queen h5 finally, and because this position after queen takes d5, bishop c6, queen h5, g6. Of course, white is a healthy pawn up, and he just needs to develop. He will be better, but according to machines, in every single line, black is just in time, whether to get back the pawn, whether to have enough compensation. So I think that this is a very principal line. If black is okay here, then queen h5 is not really dangerous at all. And I mean, it goes like this: queen h6, rook e8, and then for some reason bishop f8. You want to play the pawn on d4 is hanging, and black is just always in time, which actually is understandable, because he has a quite serious development advantage and very nice active pieces, so it's in time to equalize. Or queen h3, and I think knight g5 was the best move here. If queen g4, knight e6, bishop h6, rook e8, again, always in every line, black was in time, to equalize. Or bishop takes g5, queen takes g5, knight c3, and so on. You can check the theory here. If I remember correctly, rook e8 was the main move. But anyways, it seems that black is holding here just move per move. But anyway, it's Petroff defense. It's always like this. So if black wants to equalize fully, then he needs to play very direct lines and to study and to memorize them. But I think queen h5 probably castles is fine. But if you want something a bit safer, queen f6 should also do it as well. But there is more suffering, I would say, after queen f6, even though finally it's probably a draw also. Then knight c3. I remember that actually move was causing me a lot of troubles. I was very worried about knight c3, and in the 90s, with time, with a lot of analysis, I think I found a way how to equalize, but black has to be extremely careful after knight c3, because the d5 pawn is hanging. I just want to mention that in case if white is playing like this, knight d2, I mean, on top of probably just it's possible to take on d2, but black can simply castle, and then because if you take on e4, black simply can get back the pawn with bishop h2, king h2, check, and queen takes e4. But that's why. But knight c3, now you're threatening the pawn on d5, so which leaves black with the choice of playing knight takes e3. There is a queen h4 move. I think I also tried it once or twice, but I'm not sure it fully equalizes. It's a strange idea. g3, knight takes e3. Very important move order, because queen e1 check, you have queen e7. So knight takes e3, b takes e3, and now black has queen g4, queen h3 moves. For instance, queen g4, rook e1 check. Unfortunately for black, he has to move his king. If he would manage to castle in this position, wouldn't be a slightest problem, but he's just not in time. That's why he has to play with the king on the center, even though still bishop e2, queen f5. Still the position is not too bad, because black has some h5 options and king is pretty safe on f8, but white has this potential of playing c4. Again, there is some theory here, but if I remember correctly, at least many years ago, nowadays are new engines, maybe they find some ways for black to equalize, but I was not able to equalize fully here. So finally, I was playing knight takes e3 mainly. In this position, bc castles. And of course, the idea of the position is completely equal by nature. If it's just about queen h5 move, which forces black to weaken his position, playing f5. And here, well, there is quite a lot of theory. I think very few options left, I would say, for white here to fight for advantage. I mean, black really needs to know, has to be very accurate because it's easy to get worse in this position. But I think move per move, black holds in every line. So if bishop g5, then black has queen a8 here. So most of the time white plays, well, whether rook b1 first, whether immediately rook e1, hard to say. In some lines, it's in white favor to include rook b1, b6, in some in black's favor, but all in all doesn't change that much. So for instance, rook b1, b6, rook e1, c6, c4. Here, queen f6, I think is good enough to equalize. So the main move is rook e1, c6. Well, you see the potential danger is white playing c4, and then, let's say, theoretically exchanging black square bishop and having his rook on e5, another rook on e1. It will be better, definitely, if he manages. So there is a certain strategic danger in black's position. But with a precise play, black is in time always to equalize. I think bishop g5, queen c7, and now a very important, both moves actually important, c4, rook e3. After rook e3, g6, queen h4, rook a8, rook a1. Actually, it's very direct position. I mean, now, for instance, there was a game, if I remember correctly, не помнящий beat somebody here not such a long time ago. I think black just took on e3, played some move like rook e8, then white went c4, and it got very tricky. Yeah, but I think that I found long time ago already here b5 move, and I thought it's extremely important to play b5 here, and then in all lines I think black equalizes comfortably, because actually if white doesn't have the c4 idea in this position, then he has very little ideas to play for. I mean, only just tactically trying to play bishop e7 and so on, but I think black is always in time to hold here. So I think here black is okay. And another idea is c4, which is very logical and dangerous, but then bishop e8 was very important move. And let's say queen h3 or queen h4 possible, but queen h3 looks more dangerous. dc4, that's very important, very direct line. Otherwise, if not this bishop e8, dc4, it could have been extremely unpleasant for black. But here bishop takes f5, h6, and all those sacrifices on h6, it all leads to nothing, at best to a draw. Or bishop takes e4 check, bishop f7, and black is just in time to finally to coordinate his pieces, and it's okay, it's equal. But again, knight c3 is a very serious move, so very safe for white. I mean, you can try it, and there is a chance to get some long-term pressure, very unpleasant positional pressure, in case if your opponent, black player, doesn't know, it move per move, this variation. But anyways, then the main move is c4. And now, well, c6 is like automatic, but recently I've noticed that computers found castle move. I mean, I've never really analyzed it because I thought that c6 was practically forced. But it might be enough for equality. I mean, you have to check it yourself with engines. Still, most of players are playing c6, so they don't like to castle. I don't know why, because according to at least computer games, black is doing fine here. And if it's equalizing, then of course it's much simpler, because after c6, as you will see, black has to remember quite a few lines. Here, well, it seems that cd5, f5, maybe also rook e8 is fine, but f5, and then, for instance, knight c3, queen f6, computers are holding here with black without too much trouble. So maybe I think I was not happy with c5 with black, because you don't want to put the bishop on e7 where it's a bit passive. For instance, knight c3 takes, and this position is, white has some initiative. Yes, I mean, more active pieces, and but again, I think computer's main line is g6 here, and statistics is pretty much close to 50% here, so maybe it's nothing special for white. So castles, again, you can investigate it and you can analyze it, and if it works, great, then c4 is not a dangerous move at all. But main move is c6, and now cd, knight c3, Yeah, very important is that queen h5, now black castle. So this is even a better version of the 8th queen h5 move. Similar position, queen takes bishop c6, and now I think every single move was tried. Queen b3, queen c4, queen h5. I mean, mainly the main move is queen h5, g6, and the same story. Let's say queen h3, knight g5. Actually, yeah, without c pawns, it's even easier for black to equalize because the d4 pawn is vulnerable. Still, you need to know some theory here, but probably it is just equal. I mean, white is completely safe, of course, but black equalizes in every line. So that's why knight c3 is maybe the main move. Knight takes c3, b takes c3, castles, queen h5. Again, you see the same position, but just the c2 and c7 pawn is not there. But here already f5 is probably not recommended. I mean, here I think white is better after queen f3, simply. Now let's say king h8. Yeah, you cannot take on d5 here, bishop c6. But simply bishop d2, queen c7, h3, and this position seems to be quite unpleasant for black because the weakness of d5 pawn statistics is well not very promising for black. Here, computer games and human games, it seems that here white is slightly better, but already in this position without the c pawns, the g6 seems to work, and that is what I played several times. Queen takes d5, queen c7. That is very important. Otherwise, yeah, in that position with c2 and c7 pawns, g6 would just not be good because white would take on d5 and be pawn up. But here queen c7, and again, here you just need to analyze move per move. There are lots of options here for whites, and c4, I don't know, bishop h6, many moves. Actually, here I think was this sad story for me that I lost a game with Shanant. I think he just rapid chess. He just wanted to check, and I mean he knew probably that with the best play, black always hold everywhere. Black manages to hold the draw here, but yeah, I just confused something and got a bad position and lost. But I think that I remember that I spent a lot of time on this variation with black because it's very principled, very important, and I had a feeling at that time that I was holding it in every single line. I mean that black is managing to equalize here after all possible attempts, whatever white plays. But again, you need to work and to remember here the results of your analysis. So that is about d4. So what can I say about d4? Objectively, no. Something quite similar to the third knight takes c5 line. Maybe knight takes c5 is a little bit less forcing than d4, but all in all, same picture as in Petroff defense in general. That if black spends hours and hours pushing the button and memorizing the lines and being very accurate in his analysis, he is probably able to equalize in every line, but first of all, not too many chances to play for a win most of the time. I mean, in 90% of cases, you get the positions where, well, it's just not realistic to play for a win. You just have to simply accurately make a draw. Yeah, and of course, you need to remember all those lines. But from other point of view, if you are happy with it, if you can manage it, then objectively, I don't see any advantage for white in the d4 line. And maybe that is a reason why the third knight e5, which we are going to study now in the next lesson, why knight e5 is more popular nowadays than third d4.